Pheromones waft through the recycled air of the International Space Station, triggering an unexpected and aggressive mating response in human astronaut Jesse Robertson. The diplomatic meeting between humans and Brunali delegates erupts into chaos as Jesse lunges towards Phoebe, a plant-based alien botanist who accidentally released the potent chemical signals. Phoebe recoils in shock, her leafy skin rustling as she backs away from the advancing human. She's never witnessed such an animal-like reaction to reproduction, her own species relying on gentle pollination and spore release. Jesse's eyes are wild, his muscles tense as he fights against his own biology. "Restrain him!" Colonel Dmitry Volkov, the ISS commander, barks the order. Two human crew members tackle Jesse, pinning him to the ground as he writhes and grunts. The Brunali delegation, their skin tones ranging from soft green to deep purple, huddle together in alarm. "This creature is a danger to us all," one of them hisses, tendrils waving in agitation. "He must be removed immediately." Ambassador Sarah Chen steps forward, her posture rigid but her voice calm. "I assure you, this reaction was involuntary. Jesse poses no real threat to anyone here." As security personnel escort the still struggling Jesse to a containment area, Phoebe finds herself unable to look away. Her scientific curiosity overrides her initial fear. How could a simple release of pheromones provoke such an intense response? The human's reproductive methods seem so carnivorous. In the following hours, the ISS becomes a hotbed of tension. Human and Brunali representatives argue fiercely about the implications of this incident. Military advisors voice concerns about potential vulnerabilities if Brunali pheromones can incapacitate human soldiers. Scientists from both species scramble to understand the full extent of their physiological differences. Phoebe, driven by an insatiable need to comprehend this alien behavior, secretly accesses Earth's historical archives. She delves into humanity's complex and often violent mating rituals throughout history. The knowledge both terrifies and fascinates her, challenging everything she thought she knew about reproduction and interspecies relationships. As she absorbs this new information, Phoebe fails to notice subtle changes occurring within her own body. Her pheromone production begins to alter, her reproductive cycle shifting in response to her growing obsession with human sexuality. These changes, imperceptible to her fellow Brunali, set the stage for unforeseen complications in future human-Brunali interactions. Meanwhile, Jesse sits alone in his containment cell, head in his hands. The shame and confusion threaten to overwhelm him. Has he single-handedly derailed humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization? The weight of potential diplomatic disaster presses down on him, heavier than any G-force he's experienced in space. Outside, Earth's governments debate the implications of this biological incompatibility. The incident has exposed a fundamental difference between their species, one that could jeopardize future cooperation. As tensions escalate and both sides struggle to find a way forward, one thing becomes clear. The path to understanding between humans and Brunali will be far more complex and potentially dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The tension aboard the International Space Station remained palpable in the days following Jesse's outburst. Crew members moved about their duties with wary glances. The Brunali delegates kept their distance, and Jesse himself remained sequestered in his containment cell, a prisoner of his own biology. It was during a routine maintenance check in the hydroponics bay that fate orchestrated an unexpected encounter. Phoebe, her leafy skin rustling softly as she tended to the station's vital plant life, heard the hiss of the airlock opening behind her. She turned, her eyes widening as she saw Jesse enter, flanked by two security officers. Jesse's gaze met hers, a mixture of shame and curiosity evident in his expression. He raised a small canister to his nose, inhaling deeply before approaching. "It's okay," he said, his voice slightly muffled. "I've got this pheromone-blocking spray. It should help." Phoebe's tendrils curled inward, a sign of both interest and apprehension. "You've developed a countermeasure so quickly?" "Our scientists have been working around the clock," Jesse explained, taking a cautious step closer. "It's not perfect, but it should prevent, well, you know." As they stood mere feet apart, Phoebe felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through her body. Her skin, usually a soft green, began to take on a subtle pink hue. Jesse noticed the change, his eyes widening slightly. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Phoebe nodded, her leaf-like hair beginning to curl at the edges. "Yes, I'm fine. It's fascinating, actually. Your ability to control your reactions, I mean. In my research—" She stopped abruptly, realizing she had revealed her clandestine studies. Jesse tilted his head, intrigued. "Research?" Phoebe hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "I've been studying human mating practices. Your species' approach to reproduction is so different from ours. It's captivating." Jesse felt a flush creep up his neck, the pheromone-blocking spray only partially dampening his body's response to Phoebe's presence. "I suppose it would seem strange to you. We're not exactly subtle about it, are we?" As they continued their conversation, neither noticed the subtle changes occurring in both their bodies. Phoebe's skin continued to shift in color, while a sweet floral scent began to emanate from her curling hair. Jesse's own body temperature rose slightly, his skin taking on a faint luminescent quality. In the station's control room, Dr. Alexei Volkov leaned closer to his monitor, watching the interaction with intense interest. He turned to Colonel Dmitry Volkov, his brother and the station's commander. "Are you seeing this? Their physiologies are adapting to each other in real time. It's unprecedented." Colonel Volkov frowned, his military mind immediately jumping to potential security risks. "Is it dangerous?" "I don't think so," Alexei replied, his eyes never leaving the screen. "But it's certainly going to complicate things." Back in the hydroponics bay, Jesse and Phoebe found themselves drawn into a deep discussion about the differences in their species' reproductive methods. Phoebe's scientific curiosity overrode any lingering fear from their previous encounter. "So in human mating, physical contact is essential?" she asked, her tendrils waving gently in fascination. Jesse nodded, acutely aware of the warmth radiating from his skin. "Yes, it's a very hands-on process, nothing like the pollination methods you've described." As they talked, neither noticed Ambassador Zyla entering the hydroponics bay. The lead Brunali diplomat stopped short, her eye stalks swiveling as she took in Phoebe's altered appearance. "What is the meaning of this?" Zyla demanded, her voice sharp with alarm. "Phoebe, your physical form, it's changing." Phoebe startled, suddenly aware of the changes in her body. She looked down at her pink-tinged skin in surprise. I didn't realize—" Colonel Volkov's voice crackled over the intercom, cutting off her explanation. "Jesse Robertson and Phoebe, report to the medical bay immediately. Dr. Chen will be conducting a full examination." As Jesse and Phoebe made their way to the medical bay, followed closely by a concerned Ambassador Zyla, the implications of their encounter began to ripple through the station. Dr. Alexei Volkov hurried to join Dr. Sarah Chen, eager to begin analyzing the data from their interaction. In the medical bay, Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she took in the physical changes in both Jesse and Phoebe. "Fascinating," she murmured, running a scanner over Jesse's luminescent skin. "It appears your bodies are attempting to bridge the gap between your species' biology. We'll need to run a full battery of tests to understand the extent of these changes." As the examination began, tensions continued to simmer throughout the station. The Brunali delegates huddled together, whispering in concerned tones about Phoebe's transformation. Human crew members exchanged wary glances, uncertain of what these developments might mean for future human-Brunali relations. In the midst of it all, Jesse and Phoebe found their gazes continually drawn to each other, a newfound connection forming between them that transcended the boundaries of their vastly different species. As Dr. Chen's test progressed, one thing became increasingly clear. The story of human and Brunali interaction was not nearly finished, and its next chapter would be written in the very biology of these two unlikely pioneers. As Dr. Chen's examination of Jesse and Phoebe concluded, the gravity of their situation became increasingly apparent. The subtle changes they had experienced in the hydroponics bay were just the beginning of a profound physiological transformation. Dr. Alexei Volkov, intrigued by the unprecedented alterations in their biology, proposed a series of controlled experiments to study their evolving physiology. We need to monitor these changes more closely, he explained to Colonel Dmitry Volkov and Ambassador Zyla. I suggest moving them to a specialized observation chamber where we can control environmental factors and closely track their responses. Despite protest from the Brunali delegation, the decision was made to proceed with the experiments. Jesse and Phoebe were escorted to a newly prepared chamber, outfitted with advanced sensors and monitoring equipment. As the airlock sealed behind them, Jesse felt a mix of anticipation and unease. "I guess we're in for quite a ride," he said, attempting to lighten the mood. Phoebe's leaf-like hair rustled as she nodded. "Indeed, though I must admit, I find the prospect of further changes unsettling." Dr. Volkov's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're going to start by introducing varying levels of Phoebe's pheromones into Jesse's environment. Please remain calm and report any sensations or changes you experience." As the experiment began, Jesse felt a tingling sensation across his skin. His body temperature rose, and a faint luminescence began to emanate from his pores. To the astonishment of the observing scientists, Jesse's body started producing a new type of pheromone, one never before seen in humans. The effect on Phoebe was immediate and dramatic. Her leaf-like hair began to unfurl, releasing a cloud of fine spores into the air. The process mimicked the Brunali reproductive cycle, but with a distinctly human influence. "Fascinating," Dr. Chen murmured, her eyes fixed on the sensor readouts. "Their bodies are adapting to each other in ways we never could have predicted." As the days passed, the changes in Jesse and Phoebe became more pronounced. Phoebe's typically rigid, bark-like skin softened, becoming more pliable and sensitive to touch. Jesse, in turn, developed small, leaf-like structures on his skin that seemed capable of absorbing nutrients from light. During one of their daily check-ins, Dr. Chen noticed Phoebe eyeing Jesse's protein bar with unusual interest. "Phoebe, are you feeling hungry?" she asked, concerned. Phoebe nodded, her pink-tinged skin flushing deeper. I've been experiencing cravings for protein-rich foods. It's most unusual for my species." Jesse, meanwhile, found himself drawn to the chamber's light panels. "I feel energized when I'm near the lights," he explained. "It's like I can feel the energy seeping into my skin." As the experiments continued, tensions on the ISS and back on Earth reached a fever pitch. The United Nations convened an emergency summit to address the escalating situation. General Marcus Steele presented evidence suggesting potential ecological threats if the human Brunali hybridization were to spread unchecked. "We must sever all physical contact between humans and Brunali immediately," he argued. "The risks are simply too great." Dr. Elena Rodriguez countered passionately, "But think of the potential benefits. This could revolutionize medicine, agriculture, even space exploration. We can't turn our backs on this opportunity." Aboard the ISS, Colonel Dmitry Volkov found himself caught in the crossfire. Ambassador Zyla and her hardline faction demanded immediate separation of Jesse and Phoebe, fearing contamination of their species' genetic purity. "You must end this experiment at once," Zyla insisted, her eye stalks quivering with agitation. "The risk to our species is unacceptable." Before Colonel Volkov could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. The life support systems were malfunctioning, struggling to maintain proper atmospheric conditions. Dr. Alexei Volkov burst into the command center, his face pale with realization. "It's the hybrid pheromones," he explained breathlessly. "They're affecting the station's ecosystem. The botanical gardens are growing at an exponential rate." Colonel Volkov's teeth gritted as he made a difficult decision. "We need to evacuate all non-essential personnel immediately. We'll maintain a skeleton crew to manage the station and continue the research." As the evacuations began, Jesse and Phoebe's connection deepened in ways no one had anticipated. They found themselves able to communicate through a form of chemosensory empathy, sharing emotions and basic thoughts through pheromone exchanges. "I can sense your anxiety," Phoebe said softly, her tendrils gently brushing against Jesse's arm. "Please, don't be afraid. We're in this together." Jesse nodded, a wave of calm washing over him. "It's strange, but I feel like I understand you better than ever before." As the last of the evacuees departed, Dr. Alexei Volkov made a startling discovery. His latest tests revealed that Jesse and Phoebe's DNA had begun to merge in an unprecedented manner. "This is extraordinary," he exclaimed, poring over the data. "Their genetic material is fusing in a way we've never seen before. It's as if they're creating an entirely new species." The implications of this discovery hung in the air, unspoken but profound. As the skeleton crew of the ISS worked tirelessly to stabilize the station's systems, Jesse and Phoebe remained in their observation chamber, their bodies and minds continuing to evolve and adapt to each other in ways that would reshape the future of human-Brunali relations. As the implications of their genetic fusion became clear, the ISS faced an unprecedented crisis that would test the limits of human ingenuity and interspecies cooperation. Alarms blared throughout the station as the botanical gardens, fueled by the potent hybrid pheromones, grew at an exponential rate. Vines snaked along corridors, leaves unfurled in every available space, and roots threatened to breach critical systems. Dr. Alexei Volkov, his face etched with concern, strode into the hydroponics bay where Jesse and Phoebe stood surrounded by a sea of verdant growth. "We need your help," he said, his voice urgent. "The station's ecosystem is spiraling out of control." Jesse nodded, feeling the pull of the plants through his newly developed photosynthetic skin. "What can we do?" Dr. Volkov's eyes gleamed with a mix of scientific curiosity and perseverance. "We're going to harness this growth. If we can modify the hydroponic systems to channel the excess vegetation, we might be able to create a sustainable food and oxygen supply." Phoebe's leaf-like hair rustled with excitement. A symbiotic relationship between the station and the hybrid flora. Brilliant. The trio set to work, their efforts a dance of human ingenuity and Brunali bioengineering. Jesse's enhanced connection to the plants allowed him to guide their growth, while Phoebe's understanding of Brunali plant manipulation techniques proved invaluable. As they worked, Jesse felt a strange sensation ripple across his skin. He looked down to see the leaf-like structures on his arms, evolving, becoming more complex. "Dr. Volkov," he called out, his voice a mix of awe and trepidation. "I think you should see this." The scientist hurried over, his eyes widening as he observed Jesse's transformation. "Extraordinary," he breathed. "Your body is developing advanced photosynthetic organs. You're literally becoming a human-plant hybrid." Phoebe, meanwhile, clutched her stomach, a look of confusion on her face. "I feel strange," she said. "There's a hollow sensation in my midsection." Dr. Volkov scanned her quickly, his eyebrows shooting up in surprise. "It appears you're developing a rudimentary digestive system. Your body is adapting to processed protein-rich foods." As their physiological changes accelerated, so did their efforts to stabilize the station. The modified hydroponic system began to channel the excess vegetation, creating a network of green corridors that pulsed with life and energy. In the command center, Colonel Dmitry Volkov received a transmission from Earth that made his blood run cold. General Marcus Steele's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. "Colonel, we're initiating Operation Quarantine," Steele announced. "All space agency facilities are under military cordon, and we've established a no-fly zone in your orbit. Until we can assess the full impact of this situation, the IS is cut off from Earth." As the transmission ended, Colonel Volkov's heart made. They were on their own, with limited resources and an evolving crisis on their hands. Back in the hydroponics bay, Jesse and Phoebe's bond intensified. Their chemosensory empathy blossomed into something more profound, a form of limited telepathy that allowed them to share not just emotions, but memories and knowledge. "I can see your homeworld," Jesse whispered, his eyes closed as images of Phoebe's lush, alien planet flowed through his mind. Phoebe nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "And I can see yours. So much water, so much diversity." Their moment of connection was interrupted by a violent shudder that ran through the station. Alarms blared anew as systems began to fail in rapid succession. Colonel Volkov's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Volkov, Jesse, Phoebe, report to the secure module immediately. We have a situation." As they raced through the corridors, now alive with pulsing plant life, they passed groups of Brunali delegates huddled in tense conversation. Ambassador Zyla's eyes narrowed as she watched them pass. her gaze cold and calculating. Inside the secure module, Colonel Volkov's face was grave. "We've uncovered evidence of sabotage," he said, his voice low. "Someone is deliberately damaging key systems, disguising it as hybrid pheromone interference." Dr. Volkov's eyes widened in realization. The hardline Brunali faction, they see the hybridization as a threat to their genetic purity. As the implications of this revelation sank in, Jesse and Phoebe exchanged a look of understanding. Their transformation had become more than a scientific curiosity. It was now at the center of a dangerous power struggle. The secure module, designed to be self-contained, suddenly hummed to life around them. Plant tendrils, born from Jesse and Phoebe's hybrid pheromones, began to intertwine with the module's structure. The walls pulsed with a soft, bioluminescent glow. "What's happening?" Colonel Volkov demanded, reaching for his communicator. But Jesse and Phoebe stood transfixed, their bodies resonating with the module's new energy. They could feel every circuit, every system, as if it were an extension of their own nervous systems. "We're connecting with it," Phoebe said, her voice filled with wonder. "The module, it's becoming part of us." As the hybrid couple merged with their environment, the ISS found itself at a crossroads. The station, once a beacon of cooperation, now harbored seeds of conflict that threatened to tear it apart. Yet within the secure module, a new form of life was taking shape, one that held the potential to revolutionize humanity's future in space. The challenges they faced were immense, but as Jesse and Phoebe stood united, their bodies and minds evolving in ways no one could have predicted, they knew that the true test of their newfound abilities was only just beginning. The true test, however, came sooner than anyone anticipated. As Jesse and Phoebe's connection with the secure module deepened, a ripple effect spread through the ISS. The hybrid pheromones, now more potent than ever, accelerated the growth of the station's organic components. Vines thickened, leaves expanded, and roots burrowed deeper into the station's structure. Dr. Alexei Volkov burst into the module, his face pale with urgency. "We have a critical situation," he announced, his voice tight. "The organic growth is compromising the station's integrity. At this rate, we'll have structural failures within hours." Colonel Dmitry Volkov's mind focused as he processed the information. "Options?" he demanded, his military training kicking in. Dr. Volkov's eyes darted to Jesse and Phoebe, then back to his brother. "We need to separate this module from the main station. It's our only chance to save both the ISS and continue our research." Jesse felt a surge of alarm through his connection with Phoebe. "Separate us? But what will happen to the crew? To the station?" Dr. Volkov approached them, his expression a mix of scientific fascination and concern. "The module has become a self-contained ecosystem. If we detach it, it could potentially sustain itself as an independent space habitat. It's a risk, but it's our best option." Colonel Volkov nodded grimly. "Do it. Begin preparations immediately." As the crew scrambled to initiate the separation procedures, Jesse and Phoebe experienced a profound shift in their perception. Their consciousness, now partially merged with the module's systems, expanded. The universe around them took on new dimensions, a blend of human intuition and Brunali symbiosis. Phoebe's tendrils intertwined with Jesse's fingers as they stood at the center of the module. "Can you feel it?" she whispered. "The module, it's alive. We can guide it." Jesse nodded, his eyes wide with wonder. With a thought, he manipulated the organic structures around them, reshaping conduits and reinforcing walls. "It's responding to us," he marveled. As the separation procedure commenced, alarms blared throughout the station. Ambassador Zyla and her hardline faction seized their opportunity. They swarmed through the corridors, intent on sabotaging the process and destroying the hybrid module. "We cannot allow this abomination to continue," Zyla shouted, her eye stalks quivering with rage. Colonel Volkov's voice crackled over the intercom. "All hands, prepare for hostilities. Protect the module at all costs." In the chaos that ensued, Jesse and Phoebe's bodies underwent another evolutionary leap. Their skin began to emit a soft, pulsating glow. Tiny, luminescent spores drifted from their pores, carrying their combined genetic material. Dr. Volkov, observing from a monitoring station, gasped in amazement. The spores, they're colonizing the module's structures. They're accelerating its adaptation. The bioluminescent spores spread rapidly, flowing through the station's air filtration systems. As they encountered Xylus saboteurs, the spores interfered with their plant-based technologies. Brunali separatists found their control over the station's systems slipping away. Colonel Volkov seized the advantage. Leading a team of loyal crew members, both human and Brunali, he launched a counteroffensive. They moved swiftly through the station, subduing the separatists with a combination of tactical skill and the unexpected assistance of the hybrid spores. In the module, Jesse and Phoebe stood transfixed, their bodies resonating with the energy of their creation. Through their shared consciousness, they guided the growth of their new habitat, preparing it for its journey into the unknown. As the last of the separatists were secured, Dr. Volkov made a startling discovery. The hybrid spores had begun to affect the physiology of the exposed crew members. Subtle changes in skin pigmentation and sensory perception were evident in both humans and Brunali. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Volkov muttered, scanning a affected crew member. "The implications are staggering." With the immediate threat neutralized, the focus returned to the separation. The organic tendrils connecting the module to the ISS began to retract, guided by Jesse and Phoebe's combined will. As the final connection severed, the module shuddered. Its external structure began to morph, becoming more aerodynamic. The remnants of the station's botanical gardens, now infused with hybrid biology, integrated seamlessly into the new vessel's life support systems. Jesse and Phoebe's shared consciousness expanded, filling every part of their new home. Through a complex pattern of bioluminescent pulses, they communicated their readiness to embark on this new phase of existence. The hybrid module detached from the ISS with a final gentle shudder. As it drifted away, its surface shimmered with intricate patterns of light, a visual representation of the new life form it had become. On the ISS, the remaining crew watched in awe as the module receded into the distance. Dr. Volkov immediately began analyzing the data from the separation, his mind racing with the possibilities this new form of life presented. Colonel Volkov, standing at the observation window, felt a mix of relief and apprehension. As the hybrid vessel disappeared from view, he knew that the repercussions of this event would echo across Earth and the stars for years to come. In the hybrid module, Jesse and Phoebe's merged consciousness began to perceive new forms of energy and matter. As they ventured further into space, the vast potential of their combined biology began to unfold, hinting at discoveries that could reshape humanity's understanding of the cosmos. Their journey had only just begun, and the universe awaited their exploration. As the hybrid module vanished into the depths of space, the remaining crew on the ISS felt a mixture of awe and trepidation. The events that had unfolded were beyond anything they could have imagined when they first embarked on this mission of interstellar diplomacy. Dr. Alexei Volkov wasted no time in analyzing the data from the separation. His fingers flew across the holographic interface, sorting through streams of information that poured in from the station's sensors. As he worked, he noticed something peculiar about the crew members who had been exposed to the hybrid spores. "Colonel," he called out to his brother, who was still staring out the observation window. "You need to see this." Colonel Dmitry Volkov tore his gaze away from the stars and joined his brother at the console. "What is it, Alexei?" Dr. Volkov pointed to a series of biometric readouts. The crew members who came into contact with Jesse and Phoebe's spores, they're changing. On Earth, the scientific community was buzzing with activity. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a renowned xenobiologist, had been tasked with leading a team to decipher the complex transmissions emanating from the hybrid module. Her lab at the Astrobiology Research Center was a hive of activity, filled with the soft glow of holographic displays and the murmur of excited scientists. "There!" Dr. Rodriguez exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "Do you see that pattern? It's not random noise, it's a language." Her team gathered around, watching as intricate patterns of light and radiation danced across the screen. As they worked tirelessly to crack the code, the true nature of Jesse and Phoebe's evolution began to reveal itself. Meanwhile, in a secure facility deep beneath the Pentagon, General Marcus Steele paced back and forth, his face etched with concern. The holographic display before him showed the last known trajectory of the hybrid module. "We can't just sit back and watch," he growled. "We need eyes on that thing." His aide, a young lieutenant, cleared his throat. "Sir, we've assembled a team for Operation Stargazer. Major Derek Hawkins and Dr. Lila Chen are ready for briefing." General Steele nodded curtly. "Bring them in." As the elite team for Operation Stargazer prepared for their mission, events on the ISS took an unexpected turn. Dr. Volkov's discovery about the spore's effect on the crew was proving to be more significant than initially thought. In the station's medical bay, a human crew member named Sarah Chen sat on an examination table, her skin taking on a subtle green hue. Dr. Volkov ran a scanner over her arm, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Incredible," he muttered. "Your cells are developing chloroplasts. You're actually capable of photosynthesis now." Across the room, a Brunali crew member named Zorn was undergoing similar tests. His typically plant-like physiology was showing signs of change, becoming more animal-like in nature. "How do you feel, Zorn?" Dr. Volkov asked. The Brunali flexed his fingers, a look of wonder on his face. "Different, stronger somehow, and hungry. I've never felt hungry before." As news of these changes reached Earth, the urgency to launch Operation Stargazer increased. In a high-tech hangar at NASA's Johnson Space Center, Major Derek Hawkins ran his hand along the sleek hull of the RSS Horizon. "She's a beauty," he said to Dr. Lila Chen, who was double-checking her equipment nearby. Dr. Chen nodded, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "State-of-the-art in every way. That experimental shielding should protect us from whatever temporal anomalies we might encounter." As the final preparations for launch were underway, Dr. Rodriguez's team made a breakthrough in decoding the hybrid transmissions. The scientist burst into General Steele's office, her tablet clutched tightly in her hand. "General, you need to see this," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "Jesse and Phoebe, their consciousness has expanded beyond their physical forms. They're perceiving and interacting with space-time itself." General Steele's eyes widened as he absorbed the implications. "Launch Stargazer immediately," he ordered. "We need to intercept that module before things get any more out of hand." As the RSS Horizon blasted off from Earth, its crew unaware of the profound changes awaiting them, the hybrid module continued its journey through the cosmos. Jesse and Phoebe's merged consciousness expanded, exploring the fabric of the universe in ways never before imagined by human or Brunali minds. The module pulsed with energy, leaving a trail of small, stable wormholes in its wake. A cosmic breadcrumb trail that would soon lead the RSS Horizon into an encounter that would change the course of human and Brunali history forever. As the RSS Horizon disappeared into the depths of space, its crew unaware of the profound changes awaiting them, Earth's scientific and military communities erupted into a frenzy of activity. The massive, evolving space structure that had once been the hybrid module became visible to the naked eye, a shimmering anomaly that triggered widespread panic and speculation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's lab at the Astrobiology Research Center transformed into the epicenter of a global task force on hybrid biology. Holographic displays flickered with a constant stream of data from the RSS Horizon's partially functioning communication systems. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes darted between screens, her fingers flying over controls as she pieced together the incredible story unfolding millions of miles away. "The hybridization process is accelerating at an unprecedented rate," she announced to her team, her voice tight with excitement and concern. "The crew's biology is adapting to the new environment faster than we ever imagined possible." On the ISS, the effects of Jesse and Phoebe's hybrid spores reached a critical point. Dr. Alexei Volkov, his own skin now tinged with a subtle green hue, stared at the readouts from his latest round of tests. His hands trembled slightly as he turned to his brother, Colonel Dmitry Volkov. "Dmitry, you need to see this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Our bodies, they're evolving to survive in vacuum." Colonel Volkov's eyes widened. "Are you certain?" Dr. Volkov nodded, then gestured to the airlock. "We need to test it. Now." What followed was a series of controlled experiments that pushed the boundaries of human endurance. One by one, the hybridized crew members stepped into the airlock, their bodies tensing as the air was sucked out. To their amazement, they found themselves able to withstand the vacuum of space for short periods without protective gear. Sarah Chen, the first to volunteer, floated outside the station, her eyes wide with wonder. She extended her hand, watching as her skin adapted in real time to the harsh environment. "It's incredible," she breathed into her comms. "I can feel the radiation, but it's not harming me. It's like my body is absorbing it, using it." Back on Earth, General Marcus Steele paced the floor of his office, the weight of the world on his shoulders. The pressure to take military action against the expanding hybrid habitat was mounting, but he knew that such a move could provoke an unpredictable and potentially catastrophic response. "We need to establish contact," he muttered, more to himself than to his aide. But how? The answer came in the form of Dr. Rodriguez, her face appearing on his secure video link. "General," she said, her eyes bright with perseverance, "I have a proposal. A second mission to the hybrid habitat with a team of volunteers willing to undergo controlled hybridization before launch." Steele leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on, Doctor." As Dr. Rodriguez outlined her plan for Operation Genesis, events in space took another dramatic turn. The hybrid habitat, now a sprawling network of interconnected modules spanning several kilometers, began to pulse with energy. Suddenly, multiple smaller vessels detached from the main structure, each about the size of the original module that had housed Jesse and Phoebe. Earth's long-range sensors tracked these organic ships as they moved towards different points in the solar system. Dr. James Chen, a quantum physicist recruited for Operation Genesis, stared at the data in awe. "They're heading for Mars, Venus. Even some of Jupiter's moons," he reported. "It's as if they're initiating a rapid colonization of the entire solar system." As the implications of this development sank in, Dr. Rodriguez and her team underwent the controlled hybridization process. In a sterile chamber deep within a secure facility, they were exposed to synthesized spores derived from the IS samples. Dr. Aisha Baca, a xenoanthropologist on the team, watched in fascination as her skin began to take on a subtle iridescence. "It's happening," she whispered, flexing her fingers as new sensations flooded her nervous system. "I can feel everything, the air currents, the electromagnetic fields. It's overwhelming." Just as the final preparations for launch were underway, Earth's deep space sensors detected a massive surge of energy from the hybrid habitat. A swirling vortex of light and matter formed near the structure, its characteristics unmistakable. "It's a wormhole," Dr. Chen gasped, his fingers flying over the controls. "And it's not just there. The hybrid vessels throughout the solar system are creating similar phenomena near their locations." Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she grasped the gravity of the situation. "We need to launch now," she ordered, her voice sharp with urgency. "If we don't make contact before they enter those wormholes, we may lose our only chance to understand what's happening." As the countdown to launch began, the hybrid habitat and its offspring vessels began to move towards their respective wormholes. The sleek organic ship carrying Dr. Rodriguez and her team blasted off from Earth, its engines pushed to the limit as they raced against time. Dr. Rodriguez stood at the helm, her hybridized body humming with energy as she interfaced directly with the ship's systems. Through the view screen, she could see the massive hybrid habitat growing larger, the swirling vortex of the wormhole beckoning behind it. "Faster," she urged, both to her crew and to the ship itself. "We have to reach them before they go through. The future of humanity and the Brunali depends on it." As Earth watched in tense silence, Operation Genesis closed the distance to the hybrid habitat. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance as Dr. Rodriguez's ship streaked across the void, racing towards a confrontation that would redefine humanity's place in the cosmos. As Earth watched in tense silence, Operation Genesis closed the distance to the hybrid habitat. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance as Dr. Rodriguez's ship streaked across the void, racing towards a confrontation that would redefine humanity's place in the cosmos. The organic vessel hummed with energy, its hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that mirrored the complexity of the evolving space colony ahead. Dr. Rodriguez stood at the helm, her newly hybridized body tingling with sensations she had never experienced before. She could feel the ship responding to her thoughts, adjusting its course with microscopic precision. Entering the outer reaches of the habitat's energy field, Dr. Chen reported, his voice filled with awe. Readings are off the charts. It's like nothing we've ever seen. Suddenly, time seemed to slow. The habitat's consciousness enveloped them, a vast and intricate network of hybrid intelligences reaching out to touch their minds. Dr. Rodriguez gasped as her awareness expanded, connecting with the living structure around them. In that moment of union, the full history of the habitat's evolution unfolded before her. She saw Jesse and Phoebe's initial transformation, the birth of their hybrid offspring, and the rapid growth of a new cosmic civilization. It was beautiful and terrifying, a symphony of life and technology beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed. "My God," Dr. Baca whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. It's communicating with us." The ship glided smoothly into a docking port, guided by an unseen force. As they disembarked, Dr. Rodriguez realized she could interface directly with the habitat's organic systems. Information flowed through her mind, a torrent of data and sensory input that would have overwhelmed her human brain. Dr. Chen's fingers danced over a console that seemed to grow from the living walls. "The wormhole technology," he muttered, his voice filled with excitement. "It's not just bending space-time, it's weaving it like threads in a tapestry." As they moved deeper into the habitat, Dr. Baca's anthropological expertise came to the fore. She interpreted the rich cultural tapestry of the hybrid society, deciphering meaning from the complex patterns of light and energy that flowed around them. "It's not just a civilization," she explained, her voice hushed with reverence. "It's a living network, each individual a node in a vast cosmic web." They rounded a corner and found themselves in a vast chamber, its walls shimmering with points of light. At the center, two beings of pure energy hovered, their forms constantly shifting and changing. "Jesse? Phoebe?" Dr. Rodriguez called out, her voice trembling. The energy beings pulsed in response, and suddenly their minds were filled with images and sensations. Through a mixture of telepathy and bioluminescent displays, Jesse and Phoebe, or the entities they had become, began to communicate. They showed the team visions of the hybrid civilization's true nature and purpose. It wasn't abandoning the solar system, but expanding to create a network of habitats throughout nearby star systems. Their goal was to bridge the gap between organic life and the fundamental forces of the universe itself, using their unique biology to tap into cosmic energy sources. Dr. Rodriguez felt her hybrid physiology fully integrating with the habitat. In that moment, she experienced a profound clarity. This wasn't an ending for humanity or the Brunali, but a new beginning. The hybrid civilization offered a path to transcend the limitations of their original biologies and explore the cosmos in ways previously unimaginable. As if in response to this realization, the hybrid habitat initiated a controlled release of specialized spores. Dr. Rodriguez watched in awe as the glittering particles streamed towards Earth and the Brunali homeworld, carrying with them the combined knowledge and adaptability of the hybrid civilization. "They're transforming select areas of both planets," Dr. Chen said, his voice filled with wonder, "creating small-scale versions of the habitat." Dr. Baca nodded, her eyes gleaming with understanding. "It's not an invasion, it's an invitation." As news of these changes reached Earth, the initial panic gave way to cautious optimism. The controlled hybridization zones became beacons of innovation, solving long-standing issues of resource scarcity, environmental degradation, and interspecies conflict. Aboard the habitat, Dr. Rodriguez found herself at the center of a symbolic ceremony. Representatives from Earth, the Brunali homeworld, and the new hybrid civilization gathered around her. As they joined hands, some human, some alien, some a shimmering mix of energy and matter, their bioluminescent patterns synchronized, creating a dazzling display visible from Earth's surface. Dr. Rodriguez felt the weight of history in that moment. What had begun as an accidental release of pheromones had led to the birth of a new form of life, one that bridged the gap between species, planets, and even the fabric of space-time itself. As the hybrid vessels prepared to enter their respective wormholes, spreading this new form of life across the stars, Dr. Rodriguez knew that both humanity and the Brunali faced a future filled with unlimited potential. The carnivorous and photosynthetic methods of reproduction that had once divided them had merged into something entirely new, a cosmic symbiosis that promised to reshape the very nature of life in the universe. She turned her gaze towards the swirling vortex of the nearest wormhole, her mind already reaching out to the countless worlds that lay beyond. The journey of discovery was just beginning, and the cosmos awaited.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.